May 27th, I was 8 years old. It's the most formative day of my entire life. I have such wonderful, happy day memories of my life. Birth of my children, wedding, but that day from start to finish sticks out.
May 27th, 1997. It's a warm, muggy May day.
It was a normal work day in May. You might have a severe thunderstorm or two. Never in our wildest dreams could we imagine that the atmosphere could produce what it ended up producing that day.
Well, it started the day before, actually, when Jim Spencer, our meteorologist, was telling everyone, tomorrow we might have some active weather, so you might want to have that in your plans for the early evening newscast. And okay, we trust Jim implicitly, and he's usually right. So we came in the next day, and he was quite concerned about what he was seeing.
It was perfectly sunny. I mean, it was a normal Tuesday. The restaurant was pretty full. If you can believe it or not, Chili's was one of the only sit-down restaurants in Round Rock at the time. So we were busy all the time.
Hey, we have to do some errands. We need to go to the post office. We need to go and, pick up some groceries.
I remember going outside with my mom, and she was just like pulling weeds, and I'm just sitting out there, and it was sunny. It was like, I'm like, it's not gonna storm, I'm like, whatever.
Particularly on that day, we weren't necessarily thinking about tornadoes, but we did know that there was a large potential for at least getting large severe thunderstorms. Typically, to get tornado outbreaks, you talk about a lot of wind shear or the wind speeds being very strong in the upper part of the atmosphere. We didn't have that this day, but we did have a lot of moisture, a lot of humidity, and just a lot of potential energy into the atmosphere.
I came into work, fairly typical time, early afternoon, nothing going on here yet, but storms had started firing up in Waco. There had been at least, as I recall, 6 or 7 tornado touchdowns developing southwest along that little boundary that we didn't even think might fire a storm that day. Tornadoes were developing and they were coming toward Williamson County.
The sky just got progressively darker, and it was a very eerie feeling because it was not only dark, but part of the sky was, it was like hints of green. We had never seen that before, but I just remember what it sounded like and what it felt like. And it was very peaceful, it was very calm, and it was almost like nature was settled.
I remember going by the Igos automotive shop. My sister went to high school with them, so we were all friendly. I remember driving through town, waving at the Igo boys. So we went back and went swimming and started to notice that the clouds just looked green.
My parents work opposite schedules. My dad worked overnight, and my mom worked during the day. So my dad had already come home, but he was already asleep at this point.
Good afternoon once again from the News 36. First, we went on the air before anyone else, and we went wall to wall. So we started warning people in Jarrell in 25, 30 minutes before the tornado actually developed and moved into Jarrell.
A tornado warning in effect for northern Williamson County, including you folks in the Jarrell area.
We were watching KXAN. We were watching Jim Spencer broadcasting.
If you live in a mobile home in the Jarrell area, you need to get out of the mobile home right now and get to another place.
I remember going to my bedroom with my mom. We pulled the mattress off of my bed and held on to the side of the mattress. The handles with my mom, my sisters, and myself, and you couldn't even see out the windows at our house. It was completely black. And then it got quiet, very, very, very quiet. And I remember asking my mom, are we going to die? And she said, I don't know, sweetie. And she said, but we're just gonna pray and let's all hang on to the mattress.
So once the tornado first developed and it appeared, it was going to cross Interstate 35, the DPS troopers shut down 35 north of here.
The guests were coming in the door, but they weren't coming in to eat. They were coming off of I-35, and they weren't hungry, they were seeking shelter, and they were visibly shaken, visibly upset. I was looking around and I noticed that the windows of the restaurant were breathing. They were bowing in. And if you know how Chili's is laid out, most of the tables are around a window. So at that point, I had everybody get up from the table and get into the center of the restaurant, which was the bar.
Well, being the news anchor, you normally assume you're going to be here all day and not leave the building. But when we saw what was happening, we needed as many hands on deck out in the field. So Stacy Scheibel, my co-anchor at the time, stayed here, and I was one of the last ones to leave because, I'd assumed I'd be here, but you go too, because we need everybody out to get as much video as possible and bring it in and put it on the air.
DPS and all the authorities here are just advising you to please stay off the road.
What did they tell you to cover before they sent you out?
They just said head north on I-35.
Motorists along the interstate jumped out of their vehicles and took cover under overpasses.
About that time, I saw a table flipping down the parking lot, end over end. I looked to the right of what now it was a restaurant. Back then it was El Phoenix. I saw part of the roof lift up. There was a girl, there was a server, I'll never forget her. She's standing in the kitchen, she's bawling. She couldn't do anything except cry, and I'm screaming at her, it's gonna be okay,
Speaking of that, it was about here, somewhere in this area, that our photographer first spotted the tornado as it was spinning up into the F5.
Right now we've got the Gerald video. That's the funnel cloud we're talking about. Look at the magnitude of that tornado. That's from Gerald this afternoon. We're now going to go to Robert Hadlock. He is standing by live in Austin. He's been out all afternoon.
Well, Stacy, let's go back to that amazing picture. This is the first time I've been able to see that tornado in Gerald that we were trying to get up there to see. Our crew...
Looking at the breadth of that tornado, was it tough to make out just how big of a deal it was just on a little monitor?
Right, but it became clear when Mike Price, who shot that, came back and told everyone what it was like just to be there to see it.
Talking to some tornado spotters that are friends of mine in Oklahoma City, and now this video, they're telling me from their vantage point in Oklahoma City, one of our former photojournalists who now works up in there, and he's looked at the videotape that I told you a few minutes ago. Looks to me to be F3, F4 at least. He tells me that this storm to him looks a whole lot like one he shot near Pampa, Texas a couple of years ago, a tornado that was rated F5.
No one alive had ever seen a tornado like that here in any of our Central Texas area.
It's going too. Yeah. Oh yeah.
Here in South Central Texas, about 80% of our tornadoes that we've had over the last 60 years or so have been in the EF0, EF1 scale, the weak tornadoes. When you start talking about EF4s and EF5 tornadoes, like the Gerald was an EF5, you're talking about catastrophic sort of damage.
I remember my mom told me to go wake up my dad again. My dad had told me to take the cushions off the couch and to take him in the bathroom, so I did that. My parents are kind of standing there in the doorway and they're looking out, outside. And I remember kind of squeezing in between them, and I could see off in the distance, just this one little, very skinny little string,
As the tornado got to the subdivision across that road is when it really formed into the F5 260 mile per hour plus tornado monster.
They kind of pushed me away and they're go get in the bathtub, whatever. A few minutes goes by and then my parents come in and I was already in the bathtub. So my mom got in front of me, but her back was to my knees. I had my knees up and the wall behind me. There wasn't enough room for my dad, of course, so he just kind of kneeled beside the bathtub.
People often describe tornadoes as sounding like a freight train, which sounds like, why would it sound like that? But that is what it sounds like.
I don't remember that kind of sound. To me, it sounded like a bunch of pots and pans clanging together, but it was getting louder. I remember my dad saying, hold on tight. And I don't know if he said that because he heard the same thing kind of, he knew it was coming. It was just whoosh, everything was just gone. The wall behind me, it fell. I remember it like pushing me down, and I could feel it like pushing me. And I just remember like the dirt going in my mouth because I was trying to breathe, and I remember trying to like spit it out, and then that's it. It just went black.
Walked out our back door into the backyard, and it was quiet. The rain had generally stopped. We all look up and we look over the horizon, and we realize that there's nothing on the horizon anymore where you used to see houses. You could see the Double Creek subdivision, you could see everything that was here from my house. And I remember thinking, well, that's odd, as an 8-year-old. Wonder what happened. And then we started to hear sirens.
We're right in the middle of Double Creek Estates subdivision, what was ground zero of the deadly, intense F5 Gerald tornado. And here where we're standing, this used to be a house.
Yeah, one of the few empty lots still to this day, 25 years later. Most people rebuilt. There are still a few lots around.
So who all was home at your house, and take us through what happened best you know?
Kathy, his pregnant fiance, and then him. I mean, they wouldn't let us out here for days, mainly because there was dead bodies.
Authorities won't let him in to see what, if anything, is left.
Some of my customers think I'm dead. They don't even know I even exist. I'm not wiped out. I'm alive.
Stephanie Peterson lost everything to the tornado.
They're telling everyone, oh, they're doing this for us and they're doing that for us, and they aren't doing anything.
How did you find out about your family members?
The man, Danik, who had built some of these houses and some over on the other side, he was kind of like a first responder because it was small, and he saw me and he told me there was, because I said, I can't get out there. I don't know what's going on, because there's nothing there.
Other than being banged up, Virginia Davidson is also one of the lucky ones. In the flattened subdivision, there's nothing left of her house. The twister picked it up with her in the bathtub.
I saw my neighbors right next to me outside looking at it, and we could all see it coming. And then I went inside and I never saw them again. They didn't make it.
You can have EF5 tornadoes and still have a little bit of the structure left, an interior wall, interior closet. These were foundations, and not just one or two. You know, most of this subdivision was nothing left but foundations out here. The homes were gone. Cars there, dozens and dozens of cars, they were never found because the tornado was moving so slowly with winds of 260 to 300 miles per hour. It just ground everything up.
That was significant to see that. And you really have no word to describe what you're seeing. And thinking about what did that damage, you think, I didn't realize a weather system could be that powerful to wipe out complete neighborhoods and to scatter houses as if you just peel off a piece of paper and throw it in the wind. That's what it was like looking at where houses stood. You couldn't even tell there were houses.
Yeah, families that were home that day, school was out, end of May. An entire family of 5. I'll never forget the Igo family. The entire family of 5 were all killed by the tornado that day. Johnny Ruiz at age 15 and Michael Ruiz at age 14. We're talking about people that did the right thing that day. Those 2 boys were in a mobile home a little bit up over here from the subdivision, and they were smart enough to know they should be out of the mobile home, so they went down to their friend's house in the subdivision.
Then there's Billy Howard LaFrance, 41, a father.
His wife and his 9-year-old daughter got in the tub. The tornado hit, carried him away, and he died that day. The mother and the daughter, being in that bathtub, saved their life.
And when I woke up, it was raining. It felt like the rain was burning me. My injuries were mainly big cuts, big wounds, basically. This is probably the most noticeable on my arm. This one, and then I have one on my right hip.
And so that bathtub saved y'all's life.
Yeah, being there, I don't know, because the bathtub was, it was just gone. They never found it. It wasn't like anywhere by us or anything. Somehow we made it out.
We've been out here just about every day looking for anything that we can find that belonged to Emma so that we can give it back to her boys.
The day after family and friends buried their grandmother, their mother, their friend, they're searching the remains of her house.
And even in the days after, I mean, with more and more of that footage coming through in the stories, I mean, I'm sure you probably watched some of that on TV too.
Oh
right?
yeah. The relief and gratitude quickly turned to just, shock and grief, knowing what had happened just, 20 miles away from us.
All it took was a ride in a helicopter for Governor Bush to say he was completely blown away by what Mother Nature had done.
The tornado hits, and it's as if it sucked the life out of the ground.
Government responded quite well. Governor Bush went up there a couple of days after and said it was the worst tornado he's ever seen.
Scenes like this, neighbors taking care of neighbors in a makeshift shelter, volunteers searching through the rubble, hoping for a miracle.
No one alive had ever seen a tornado like that here in any of our Central Texas area.
And we haven't seen one since.
No.
Anywhere in Texas.
Anywhere in Texas. There has not been a tornado as strong as an F5.
Generally, there is a lot more time to prepare now. Sometimes we can see these tornado outbreaks days in advance. Not just a day, but you're talking 4, 5, even 6 days out, where we know that the atmosphere is coming together to produce, a probable tornado event.
When we talk about tornado warning for the Jarrell area, we always try to reassure the folks up there, what the situation truly is. Is it just Doppler indicated?
Sure.
We really try to comfort the folks in Jarrell.
It seems that at least several families have chosen to stick around, still here today in Double Creek Estates subdivision.
There are a few families out here that did rebuild.
I'd ride my bike down there and it would be just weird, just being, you could kind of tell where the driveways used to be and just being there and the houses were gone and you knew they weren't coming back and so that was hard.
The names on the memorial behind us, how many do you know?
All 27 of them.
I get that Jarrell doesn't want to be known as the tornado town, but I just don't want people to forget either because a lot of people were affected and a lot of families and they deserve to be remembered.
You can never forget the history and the roots of what made Jarrell before 1997, on May 27th, 1997, and I think as long as you never forget, then that means that Jarrell is still partially the same place that it should be, and maybe changes for the better.